beautiful June afternoon. We're going to record this meeting. We are recording this meeting already. There you have it. And I think just jump into some kind of welcome and details. This is, for those who are new to our meetings, a Zoom webinar. So if you're a member of the public, you're in the attendees group, and we have to promote you if you want to give public comment. Otherwise, we can't see or hear you. The panelists are our committee and staff, and my name is Ona Ferguson, here with Maggie Ostus from the Consensus Building Institute, facilitating today's Natick, I'm going to say it wrong, which is funny, Charles River Dam Advisory Committee meeting. So thanks everyone for being here. We have a 2.5-hour meeting, which is our sort of standard running time for these conversations. And our plan is, I'm going to just put up the agenda, Maggie, if you've got it there. Our plan is to go, we're going to do some committee business since it's been a while since we've met, and just like remind ourselves, where are we in this process? What have we done so far? Who have we heard from? What happened in the last few months? And what's coming next? And then we'll get some project-related updates that town staff will share related to the dam. We'll take a break. And then today we're going to talk about conceptual elements for improving the parks, right? At our last meeting, we talked really a lot about what's important to make this place special for people and for it to serve a variety of functions and needs for the community. We'll go through some concepts to share with you, and we'll be able to talk with the team that developed those. And then we have time for public comment at 6 o'clock, and we will wrap up by 6:30. Any questions on the agenda before we do some introductions? We can take down that slide. Thank you. All right. I'm going to go around and do intros, and I would invite you each to introduce yourself and share a favorite summer place. Some place that you like in the summer. Could be your front porch, does not have to be fancy. And I'm going to just call on people to make it easy. We'll go John first and then Martin.
Thanks, Ona. John Marshall, Deputy Town Administrator of Operations. I guess my favorite summer place would be Booth Bay Harbor, because that's where I got engaged.
Thank you. Martin and then David Lotting.
Martin Kessel, and I'm here as I'm a town meeting member in Precinct 10, which is the area around South Natick. And also I am on the river. I'm on Water Street, one of a couple people. And I'm also one of several people on the Open Space Advisory Committee, many different roles. And aside from the river, which I just was out on today, my favorite place was the mountains of New Hampshire.
Yeah. David Lotting and then Chris.
Yeah, hi, I am representing the Open Space Advisory Committee. And I lived for about 10 or 12 years, just 2 houses from the dam. So I'm really familiar with it. And now I live on the bottom of Cottage Street. And my favorite summer place would have to be Lake Winnipesaukee. I've been spending summers there for probably 10 or 20 years. We don't own a place, we rent, but we moved around the lake and enjoy it.
Thank you. Chris and then Mike.
I'm Chris Stillman. I'm a member of the Natick Conservation Commission. And I think in the last decade, my favorite summer place is my wife's cabin on Round Pond in Bethel, Maine. And It's a good place. There's no internet, no telephone, and you can check out pretty easily.
And a reminder to everybody that this is Chris's first meeting as a formal member. He replaced MK, representing the Conservation Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and then Janine.
Good evening, all. My name is Mike Balcom. I am also a resident on the river, just like Martin, right next, 2 doors down. My favorite places, certainly the Charles River Dam ranks right up there. It's where I proposed to my wife, so there's a little connection there. But I think the summertime we head down to Situate Harbor. We have a place right on the harbor there, and we basically just can't get there enough every week. So that would be mine.
Thank you. Janine and then Terry.
I'm Janine Furr. I represent the Historic District Commission, and I'm a longtime Water Street resident from several years ago. And my favorite place, I'm in my favorite place, which is Eastham, Massachusetts, on Town Cove, looking out over estuaries to the Atlantic Ocean.
Thank you. Terry and then Maggie.
Terry Evans, representing the Planning Board, but also serving with David and Martin on the Open Space Advisory Committee. I'm the Planning Board rep to Open Space. And I think my favorite place is in Delaware. It's we rent the second floor of a house that our parents rented for the first time 60 years ago this year. And we still rent the second floor from the same family now, the son and grandchildren of the people our parents rented from. So a lot of history there. It's gotten slightly more congested in the last year because of a famous occasional summer resident who bought a house there, who's now the president of the United States. So we've not run into President Biden. We bike past his house, but and hope that he's not there when we are, because it just kind of congests the town.
It didn't occur to me this would be like a geographic icebreaker. We'd be getting like the lay of the land. Maggie and then Jillian.
Hi, y'all. Maggie Ostus. I'm a member of the facilitation team with ONA. And I think my favorite summer place is anywhere with a beach and fried clams. I'm not too particular, but those two things are very, very important.
Thank you. Jillian and then Seth.
I also have an anywhere summer place, which is anywhere where there's good ice cream. I really like going to Sunshine Farms a lot in the summer. So I am the parent that always says, let's get ice cream after dinner. And I am planning on doing that later today. So thanks.
Thank you. Seth and then Bill.
Hi, I'm Seth Levine. I am a member of the Natick Park and Rec Commission. And my favorite place, I would say, or places, are the beaches on the Outer Cape.
Thank you. Bill and then Claire.
Thank you. Bill McDowell, town engineer. My favorite summer place is a lake up in the foothills of the Berkshires, about 20 minutes outside of Northampton. We've been going there for about 50 years now.
Great, thank you. Claire and then Becca.
Hey everyone, my favorite summer place is Martha's Vineyard. I grew up in Ohio, but my parents and my family have been going there every summer since I was born. The first time I was there was I was 6 weeks old. So that is, moving back to Boston from Ohio has made it a lot easier. No longer a 12-hour car ride, but a 2-hour car ride. But that's my favorite place.
Great. And Becca and then Iris.
Becca Stendal. I would say my favorite place is anywhere connected to water, ocean, fresh water. I don't care. I just like being near the water in the summer. Feels cool.
Thank you. And then Iris is going to be our presenter later on, but since you're here, I want to introduce you because people are seeing your window.
Hi, I'm Iris Lin. I'm a senior landscape architect from Hubbardston Time Bomb Studio. And my favorite summer place for now, I think is White Mountain area. There are so many like trails and waterfalls. I just found it lovely. Yes, thank you.
I want to have all of these summers combined. I would like to give everyone vacation for the next 2 months and we can go on a road trip. But since we can't do that, we're going to do some work together. So nice to see everybody. We have 20 attendees, 15 people in the kind of front part of this meeting. Thank you all for being here tonight. We will do our best to make this a good use of time and are really looking forward to digging into some of this content. Committee members with you. Members of the public, if you are interested in making public comment, they can raise their hand, right, Maggie? Can you raise your hand? You click on the little like raise hand button at the bottom of your screen probably, and let us know. We'll just kind of manage time appropriately. I'll let you take them down in a second. But if you want to make public comment, could you click the hand raise hand button? Right. At the moment, we have one. Thank you, David. You can take your hand down, and we'll check that one more time before that session of part of the meeting. Committee business. Committee members, you saw a draft meeting summary from the January 25th meeting. Any concerns before we finalize and post that? All right, we'll do that. And Maggie, if you would put the slides up, I'm gonna go through some like just orientation. It's been a few months. Where are we? What are we doing? How are we doing it? So give me 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll get into some other content. We have really fundamental expectations for participation, which have never been a problem here. Next slide, please. This has been our committee's process up through January. We have 9 meetings. Today is our 10th, which you see in the dark green across the top, starting from April 2021. We have done 2 big public or community engagement sessions, one in late spring 2021 and one around December. We also held several abutters meetings in the fall and visited 4 different dam sites for removal and repair. Next slide, please. There's an updated sort of work plan or timeline on the project webpage for anyone who wants to kind of go back and see those pieces. But among the things we have, oh, look, this is a little bit redundant. I said some of these things. You'll see we had 450 responses to the community input survey in June 2021. We've engaged with a bunch of middle school students back in that same time period. And we also shared some input from middle school students just recently from a class that was exploring the same question that you all are exploring. And in the winter, 6 months ago, we got about 900 responses to our community input survey. We have been learning about the options, like what is this choice we are making on different key issues like safety, ecology, history, abutters perspectives, community use. We've had a series of presentations from different experts, done our site visits. We have developed a range of materials that are on our website, including a FAQ document for anyone who's sort of newer to this and would like to figure out what we know and some of what we discussed. We recommend going to the project webpage. Everything is there. And in the last 4 or 5 months, we've taken committee input and feedback and public input and feedback to gather even more information on some of the key questions. So we'll be hearing about that today and at the next meeting. Next slide, please. These are the organizations and experts we've engaged. You can look at this slide in greater detail if you are interested in kind of going into that level of depth, but we have all different kinds of expertise that we've been looking to. We have engineering, for hydrology and hydraulic models for dam repair and removal scenarios, and answering questions about flooding, safety, and more. From an ecological perspective, we had presentations on the impacts of dams to river health, including temperature, oxygen levels, algae, fish passage, and more. And we've also received letters from Mass Audubon and the Charles River Watershed sharing their preference for removing the dam. Culturally, we have resources that were developed by Charlotte Diamont, a Wellesley College student, about the history of dams in South Natick. We also heard from an archaeologist about supporting documentation of any historical finds in either repair or removal. And we heard from the committee's Nipmuc representatives who shared petitions from their ancestors related to dams on the river and expressed an interest in seeing this dam removed. And at the last meeting, we heard from the CEO of Paddle Boston about what it's like kayaking and canoeing on the river and what a future boat launch in the area could look like. We've also heard from a variety of other groups and experts, including neighbors up and downstream, another dam repair firm, and other towns, budding towns and similar. So next slide, please. We have received feedback from a variety of groups and organizations. You can read here on what they would like to see happen and why. All of this is available, again, on our website and in sort of packaged public comment that we put together before each meeting so that committee members and others can read the input that's coming in. Since our January meeting, Maggie and I also touched base individually with our committee to see sort of how things are going while this technical work was being done, and get your sense of the process and kind of where things stand. And I believe we talked with every committee member. Thank you all for your time, and heard a lot of similar sentiments from you, people appreciating the in-depth exploration of the content, also appreciating each other's kind of respectful tone and thoughtful deliberations. Most people are fairly clear on what they individually would like to see happen. And people are looking forward to learning more at tonight's meeting and the meeting in a couple of weeks. Many noted they are disappointed, and they know members of the public are also disappointed that there isn't a viable third option where we could keep the trees and the dam, but appreciated that we had really tried to look into that with some technical support. People said they're comfortable with the process to date and the timeline for wrapping up, which is tonight's meeting and 3 others between now and the end of July. And committee members, several of you, wanted a reminder about how the decision-making is going to work. So we'll go to that in a second, and John and I will kind of tag team that, how our work fits in with the town's process. Next slide, please. Maggie, next. Thank you. This is the schedule for the summer, and we have a meeting today. We are focusing on the conceptual park design. Oops, that's redundant in my, sorry, as I speak. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about spillway design and cost and the analysis of that Stantec has been doing to get the design of dam spillway removal to match the kind of level of design that we had for dam repair. In June and July, we are going to invite committee members to check in with the committees they are part of. Like each of you has constituents, friends, neighbors. We are hoping you will kind of circle up with them as we go into our deliberation. And in July, we have 2 meetings to deliberate and do our best to come to a decision on what should happen with this dam. And then we would develop that recommendation to go to the select board. Slide, please. At the beginning of the process, we talked about our decision making, and you all selected an approach that you wanted for this group. So we decided that we would say that, that the committee would have reached a decision if 75% of voting participants could agree on the final recommendation. Each member has one vote, and your choices at that time will be to endorse and support the final recommendation, to say you can live with the final recommendation, all things considered, say you can't live with the final recommendation, or you may abstain. If you abstain, your sort of number isn't counted in our calculation of the percentage. And then our final report, as noted previously, there's a lot of material on our work today. All our meetings are recorded. We have summaries of them, all the public input. We expect that the final report will be somewhat brief about what you finally decide, but we would name the key reasons for whatever decision you get to, how much agreement there is, and if there are some who do not support the group's recommendation, we would name their main areas of concern and what made them vote that way. And then I'm going to let John say how this feeds into the town's decision-making process, and then pause, talk about any and all of this.
Thanks, Ona. So just kind of walking through from that handoff in terms of once the Charles River Dam Advisory Committee makes a determination. Again, we're all reviewing information right now to identify a path forward. And Ona has laid out exactly, what that recommendation to the board will look like. So we're in that process right now, and that will be concluded over the next couple of months. Once that report is concluded, it will be sent on to the select board. The select board will then review the information, kind of absorb that, might have some follow-up questions from that, but they will deliberate and decide a path forward in terms of what approach they would choose, either repair or removal of the spillway. They would then work with town administration to develop a plan to fund the preferred option. I think everyone knows we do have some money that was set aside for repair of the dam. When this committee was formed and we took a pause in that approach, there will be some steps that we would need to take in either path forward. And then from a funding standpoint, we would need to circle back in with town meeting, update them in terms of the path forward, and seek funding to complete the preferred plan and option moving forward.
Thank you. Let's take down the slides, and we have a little time. Committee, for your thoughts on any and all of that. I hope none of that is a surprise. I hope that's what you were expecting, or at least it feels familiar, like, oh yeah, we did that decision-making thing. It was a while ago, but how does that all feel? Do you have any either clarifying questions or concerns? All right, welcome David Yancey and Kristen Wyman. Happy to have you both here. And going once, going twice, process questions. All right. Thank you all. With that, then I think we are ready to go to some town staff updates on topics we thought the committee would want to hear about. So who gets that first? Let me see. I'm going to Bill.
Okay, thank you,
Bill,
and I
you wanna
appreciate
jump
that. One update that we do not have a slide for right now is that we did receive a report, breach analysis report from Stantec, and that was actually being delivered to the Department of Ecological Restoration. That will obviously be part of the presentation in the next 2 weeks. But we have had that. We have had a chance to review that. And we will be reviewing that with the committee in detail with the authors of the report as well in 2 weeks. Something else that occurred, during our hiatus was that GZA, our geotechnical consultants, performed a phase 1 inspection of the Charles River Dam on December 3rd, 2021. A phase 1 inspection is something that is required biennially, for any owners of a high hazard dam. In this last report, it was submitted in February of 2022. GZA rated the dam's condition as poor. we have had a fair rating up until this time. This is a downgrade from the previous inspections rating. There's no physical difference to the dam. Nothing has changed and nothing has happened to the structure of the dam, but we have been downgraded to a poor rating. That new condition rating now requires the town to perform semi-annual inspections. These semi-annual inspections are somewhat less intense than the biennial inspections. They're more of a visual inspection. They're not quite as in depth. They will cost approximately half of what the biennial inspection costs, but because there's 2 a year, we have now basically just doubled our inspection costs. Again, just want to stress that nothing has changed. The condition of the dam has not changed. GZA was in deliberations with ODS prior to this when we were talking about the possible alternative of putting fill or earth material in front of the dam. And at that time, ODS had mentioned to GZA, they did not anticipate that they would be receiving another fair rating from GZA regarding the dam based on the number of mature trees that we had on top of the earthen structure of the dam. So again, just the rating itself has changed. It changes our inspection regime, but nothing about the dam itself or the conditions of the dam have changed. These are still the recommendations from the inspection report that we maintain a program of brush removal and grass trimming at the earthen embankment, and then remove the vegetation that is beginning to establish within the joints of the entrainment wall, the masonry spillway. Those are a little bit more dangerous in that they can loosen up the stone protection of the entrainment walls on the dam itself. The remedial measures that were recommended in the February report do not change any of the things that we're talking about for the maintenance project itself. So again, the condition has changed, but the recommendations and the actual condition of the dam is unchanged. Okay, next slide, Maggie. The dam emergency action plan. This is something that we as the owners and operators of the dam are required to have and to update annually to the Office of Dam Safety. So the reason we are required to do that is based on the amount of water that's being held in the impoundment area. That classification as a high hazard dam requires this emergency action plan. Mostly the emergency action plan identifies the equipment, manpower, and material that's available for implementation in the event of a failure or a near failure. It creates a flow chart for notification of key personnel, both in Natick and downstream in Dover and in Wellesley, for informing the emergency agencies. It also includes a dam inundation map showing the impacted downstream environment and a procedure for warning downstream residents if failure is imminent. Could you show the flow chart, Maggie? Next slide. This is the actual flow chart of communication that would occur from the inspection that notes either a condition that might represent imminent failure or failure in hours or days. Mostly what we do is we notify emergency dispatch services to let them know the condition of the dam, how much time we believe we have before there would be a failure or some form of event. There are also 4 conditions that when we are inspecting the dam, that we are required to let the emergency notification agencies know about. Condition A, which is an urgent condition, is dam failure appears imminent or it has occurred. Has occurred or is occurring can't be prevented. So this is an emergency situation. This would be an evacuation situation, and immediate action is required. Again, Natick is responsible for notifying the emergency notification processes in the other towns. We are not required to notify individuals either in Natick or in the other towns itself. We rely on reverse 911 type technologies for things like that. The second condition is condition B, which is a potential dam failure, which is rapidly developing. So the situation may eventually lead to dam failure, but there is no immediate threat of dam failure. We have hours or days to react. And something like this, we would also notify the Office of Dam Safety. We would notify GZA And we would notify mass emergency management as well for guidance and opinions on what to do with the situation to keep that from developing into a situation that would be a condition A. There are two non-emergent conditions, which is an unusual event, which is slowly developing. So the situation is not normal, but it's not really threatening to the operational structural integrity of the dam, such as increased seepage along the toe of the downstream face, or the potential of an erosion event on the top of the dam. Again, something that is occurring, but something that is not an emergent situation. And then there's the non-failure emergency condition, no danger of failure, but just flooding concerns. And that would be like a heavy rain event or things like that. That is the emergency action plan. We update that yearly. We get the contact lists to the Office of Dam Safety, and we notify the other towns that we're updating the list, and we make sure that the telephone numbers are fresh. And we're in the process of putting that together now. This is the inundation area that has been noted in our emergency action plan. And it may be a little difficult to see, and you certainly can't get a lot of detail out of this, but you note that there are two different lines of inundation. Inundation is important to separate from just seasonal flooding. Inundation is what would occur were there to be a catastrophic failure of the dam. So the water that comes out of that would be like in a bolus or in a slug of water. And what they do is they measure the channel's ability to move that water, and they come up with the backwater how much of the area would be inundated. So this is a flash type flood. This is something that is more serious than a regular rainfall flooding event. It is an estimate by all measures. And they do the best that they can with that, knowing that if there were a dam failure, there would be other things within the river, such as the trees on the dam, such as some of the sediments behind the dam, such as the earthen material from the dam itself. So you'll notice that there's a magenta line and a blue line. And the magenta line is what would happen in a dam failure under fair weather conditions. And this could happen if the water level was relatively high against the dam and there was a blowdown of one or several trees along the top or the upstream face of the dam, which allowed water into the dam itself and began an erosion process. Again, fair weather, so there's not the addition of flood water behind that or heavy rainwater behind that. So the river flow itself would be considered to be more along a normal, along the normal lines. But you can see that the magenta line is a smaller area on the ground than what would be considered for a weather event, a wet weather event, which is the blue line that you see there. And that flooding would be more extensive because in addition to the water being released from the impoundment, we also had raised water elevation, raised flows, significantly heavy flows in the Charles River itself, in addition to a dam failure. That's why you see this map and the overlays with the two sets of lines on them. They represent two different conditions. And it is something it's something as an estimate that has to be created as part of an inundation map. It is a very conservative map. It's very difficult to understand what the characteristics of that water would be without really understanding what the failure itself was, how much additional material was either in the river or was being introduced to the river by the actual failure of the dam. So this is something that we have, and it is, these are the houses that would be notified, the houses that you see impacted by these magenta and blue lines that you see here. As part of what we were looking at, just to give the committee a sort of idea of what that might mean, we had compiled, next slide, please, Joan, Maggie. We had basically included all of the properties that were affected by those two inundation zones, in the fair and wet weather inundation zone, the wet weather zone only. These are the assessed values of those properties, property and building. So just to give you an idea of what the downstream property valuations are, we've just assembled this. And again, these are just the assessed values. This is not to say that this is what would be damaged, what would be destroyed, or what might only get wet, as part of an inundation event. but just to give the committee members kind of a scope of what is downstream, what would be affected in the event of a failure. This is a list that we compiled, and I just want to acknowledge Jillian and her intern for putting this together. And again, these are just the assessed property values. This is not an estimate by any stretch of the imagination of what would occur anytime we had any sort of an event that might affect the dam. But just to let you know, these are the properties that are within what is considered to be the inundation zone for our emergency action plan. And that's all I have for that. Something to remember, this is a slide that was prepared, that the inundation zone that you see on the left does not equal what the FEMA 100-year floodplain or 500-year floodplain is. These are two completely different estimations of flooding. Again, flooding from a natural event you see on the right, flooding from an inundation event, an emergency event of the dam catastrophically failing. These are not the same. The inundation maps they affect considerably more area than just a 100-year flood. There are also, closer to the dam, there are also the possibilities of velocity damage by the river itself flowing, and or damage from materials in the river, such as trees, stones being pushed along. Those are also within that inundation zone. So there's a much higher degree of risk as far as in an inundation zone as there is to the regular 100-year flood event from a FEMA event. So the risk of flooding, not inundation, the risk of flooding is the same for the river in either event. If you'll recall, when GZA talked about removing the dam, it slightly altered the floodplain upstream of the dam, but only slightly. But downstream of the dam was not affected at all. That risk of a rain event that causes the river to swell and flood its banks does not change in either scenario, whether we repair the dam or whether we breach the spillway. Just something to remember. Inundation, as we were talking about inundation from your emergency action plan, we wanted to make clear that that is a very different event than just weather flooding.
Thank you, Bill. Committee, we are going to let Claire do an update on fish passage, and then we'll have some time for discussion. But if you have questions for Bill on those two pieces he just presented, please jot them down so you'll remember them. And Claire, the floor is yours.
So as many of you are aware, there is currently a fish run that is a part of the existing spillway structure. It's been talked about in a number of our previous meetings, but the existing fish ladder is thoroughly unsuitable for the actual types of fish that are using our river. We have been well aware of this back when it was constructed. They were sort of doing the best they can, but with more knowledge and understanding of what fish need in order to get upstream and across dam obstacles, it doesn't work for the fish that are currently trying to use it. We did receive this year an update from Mass DEP on their diadromous fisheries stream management policy. Diadromous fish are fish that live in saltwater most of the time, but need to access fresh water in order to breed or feed during particular times of the year. This policy from DEP is in regard to stream management that connects to diadromous fisheries, which are a very specific set of requirements. Currently, Natick does not have any diadromous fisheries within our community, but we do connect directly to 2 fisheries within Wellesley that are just downstream of this dam location. So there is a potential for some fish to benefit from whatever decision is made here. Next slide, Maggie. So some town staff members met with a staff member from NOAA, which is the National Oceanographic, I'm forgetting what the second A is, association. And that was to get a little bit more clarity on what if we were to repair the dam and leave the spillway in place, what would be the obligations of the town in terms of the fish ladder. The sort of long story short is summarized on the screen here, but there is atmospheric, Bill told me, is the second A in NOAA. Thank you, Bill. But if the town were to repair the dam and maintain the spillway and the fish ladder, there is a possibility that the state may enforce the law that is referenced on the screen here, in which case the town would need to provide an alternative to the existing fish ladder. This could come about in either replacing the physical stone structure that's there right now, or the installation of a more sort of add-on structure to the existing spillway that would be constructed out of metal. This would add cost and potentially time to the project, as it's likely that additional permitting would be needed to ensure that the fish ladder is meeting the requirements of the state. And it also comes with a requirement for documentation of fish run season, which runs from sort of roughly early April to sort of mid-May, at which point the town would have to employ somebody who's qualified to observe and document fish runs, and the report would have to be provided to the state. This isn't a requirement. There are a number of projects that have happened in the state where this has not been enforced, but I do think we maybe sort of got the cart before the horse a little bit, and having spoken to NOAA, we may have brought some eyes down on this project. And so it is very likely that the town would be required to sort of comply with this law. This process would be as a part of the wetland permitting through the local conservation commission, as well as the state and federal permitting through the Army Corps of Engineering and Chapter 91. So that was all I had on fish passages.
Thank you. Let's take down the slides and committee members. A lot of new information on where things stand for this dam, and for us, what questions do you have? What responses do you have? We have like 20 minutes if we want to take it. Oh, I'm just unmuted. Becca, go. You put up your hand. Let's do it.
So I just want to make sure I understand what Bill presented in words I understand. So basically, the presence of the dam creates a risk of inundation that could be catastrophic to downstream properties. On the other hand, the flooding, which is just regular flooding that we have no control over, there's no change regardless of the presence of the spillway dam removal. Correct?
Yeah, that is correct. That's essentially correct. Holding that water back, the dam is kind of holding potential energy for all that massive water. Were that to be released, that would be a more significant event.
Okay. So from the safety considerations we've discussed.
Yeah, for a lot of different reasons, but the biggest thing is that the seasonal flooding, as we noted, the ebb and flow of the river as we get more rainfall upstream in the watershed.
Yeah,
that does not change in either scenario.
Thank you.
Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, this is for Bill as well. When we got the designation from fair to poor, was that, and you said that was not due to any changing circumstance with the dam's engineering? Is that a regulatory shift that they've made it stricter, and that's why we have that designation as poor?
So what I would say for that, when we were speaking to ODS regarding, what we were talking about as far as this decision being made right now, what came up from the director of the Office of Dam Safety was, I'm surprised you guys have been, getting away with a fair rating up till now. So really the fact that their attention was drawn to it more than anything else, you just wanted to emphasize that when GZA spoke with them, and I was with them at that meeting, it was very clear that basically the Office of Dam Safety was saying, we believe that should be a poor rating, and GZA amended their next inspection report. That does change our reporting back to ODS, but it was not for any evident or physical change on the dam itself. Nothing has changed on the dam. It's just that rating has gone from fair to poor.
Got it. Thank you.
Other responses, comments, questions? Terry.
Sorry, thank you. I wasn't sure. No, but just a quick follow-up on Chris's point, and wondering if any reason for the shift in rating has to do with what's seen more as meteorological issues. In other words, it's not so much that the dam is getting worse, but the likelihood of changing weather conditions, a changing climate is likely to create conditions. So in other words, conditions are likely to be more serious. Therefore, a dam is rated against whatever the conditions are. Just trying to understand if that's come into play.
So I would agree with that assessment. It's one of the reasons why, as we're looking at this as operators of the dam, we don't feel, a great degree of confidence that we would not get an event in excess of, say, the 100-year storm, in excess of the 500-year storm. We feel that that does present, more of a risk now than it did, say, 10, 15 years ago. I don't know that that was ODS's reasoning at all. It may have been. Their engineers as well. I would say that it was more the fact that they had just been accepting the reports from GZA as our technical experts and just taking their rating without ever really like paying attention to exactly how many mature trees were actually on the dam. When that was brought to their attention, what we really got was, we don't expect that GZA is going to come back to us with a, don't try to slip this one by us again. We're aware of what's going on the dam.
Thank you.
Can I jump in again? So part of this question is a little ignorant on my part because I haven't read through enough of the documentation to know the actual history of the studies. But how is the wetland delineation going to change downriver when? In fact, downriver or upwind river when the embankment changes and we've got nothing there in the event of a dam removal. Have we done any analysis of that? Sorry, Claire.
No, it's fine, Chris. So that's part of what Stantec's report is going to give us, is a sort of a rough estimation of potentially where the new banks will sort of level themselves. Everything sort of upland of the new banks will likely be qualified as a bordering vegetative wetland until a point where the soils dewater enough to no longer qualify as hydric soils. But if I had to guess, that's probably going to take a couple of years, if not decades. So the wetland jurisdiction in terms of the property owners, they will likely reduce the riverfront area that potentially impacts their homes, but they will still have riverfront area on their properties. And they may have an increase in bordering vegetated wetlands, but all of that is sort of dependent on where the final line of the river draws itself.
That's the impoundment area, but
yep.
Is the downriver, I know the report's not done yet, but has the downriver been seen to, I know you essentially have the same hydrodynamic shape of the river without the dam, but I think that for that first, year or so, I would wonder if you would get an increase in wetland delineation downstream.
Yeah, so because a lot of the lots downstream are already sort of built right up to the river's edge, I don't expect that there will be a significant shift in the wetland delineations that we're seeing downstream of the dam. The river itself won't, the bank location won't change downstream, but that sort of water that comes and the sediment that comes downstream may result in a slight shift of the wetland areas. But I would expect it to be very, very minimal and really only on the lots that are town owned, that are undeveloped, that abut the river at this point, because most of the lawns on like Water Street and those streets in the Oxbow, the lawns go right up to the water's edge at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Something to note, Chris, is that if we were to do the repair option, then that wetland downstream, immediately downstream of the dam would change significantly, because we would have to take that entire embankment area down to the water's edge and basically strip it of undergrowth and trees. So there would be some grading work done in the, it would be fairly minor, but that would change that character of that small wetland inlet that's just downstream of the dam.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to dominate this, but one other question I had is just the nature of the kind of dendritic river system. Is there any thought that maybe some of these oxbows are going to start to try to try to reconnect, or are they going to try to re-armor some of those areas where you have the drastic bend, like that first dip, and then the larger oxbow to the north?
I would, oh, sorry, Bill.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would be fairly surprised if at this point, with or without the
It is
dam.
pretty mature, yeah.
Yeah, if they tried to reconnect, I think that would something that would be maybe more closely assessed during the design stage of whichever option, if the town chooses to move forward with the removal. Oh, and Maggie just asked, for folks who aren't aware, an oxbow is a section of the river that has sort of curved to such a point where if we allowed the river to sort of follow its natural course and there was no development happening, would sort of pinch off on itself and form a separate system. And then the river would sort of reconnect at the shortest point of the oxbow. So I can't really demonstrate this quite well with my hands, but if this hand is, where Water Street and everything is, if there weren't the development that there was, the Charles River could sort of, take the path of least resistance, the shortest path along the short edge of the oxbow, cutting off this little sort of U segment as a separate lake system. But because of the amount of development in that area, I would be fairly surprised if that were to occur in this scenario.
Okay.
Questions or responses to the fish passage?
Just I guess add to that, there's a significant grade too as that river comes down. There's a big hill there where that oxbow, where the river might want to put some forces on it. So, it would have to do some significant geological tunneling to get through there. So I don't think that's the problem. I think, but, I think there will be changes to the river downstream, and I'll be interested in a couple of weeks to hear what Stantec has to say. If they remove the spillway, there'll be the removal of that 20 foot of cement and the hydraulics of the water coming over the spillway is even across the spillway, which is not natural. So that's why I think that river between the spillway and certainly Pleasant Street Bridge and even beyond, that's not a natural flowed river. It's just all rocky and it's the same basically depth all the way across. So I think there'll be some carving out of that and it'll just look more like a natural river, but I'll let the experts chime in on that in a couple of weeks.
Anybody else have responses they'd like to share to any of this? Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Bill. We will, let's go to break now. So we'll come back around 5 past. So we're running about 10 minutes ahead. And we will come back and hear our presentation on kind of concepts for the park. So just, you can turn off your video, audio, and we'll see you at 5 past 5. Thank you. Welcome back. Hope everybody got a chance to stretch, eat or drink a little something. We are going to go into a presentation that follows from the discussion we had at our last meeting in January about how to make the park on either side of the river a special place. And I'm going to turn this over to John to kick this off with just a couple introductory words before we go to Iris that I want to name. As I think the committee is well aware, designing the park is not in our purview. What is in our purview is to potentially name things that are important to us about this place and things that we hope the community will move on in the future, right, related to our decision. So that's where we're coming into this, and we're really excited to look at what's been done to help us imagine and think about this. And John, you want to jump in?
Thanks, Ona. So just a reminder to everyone, one of the things the committee felt was important was to understand what this could look like in either scenario. So these are conceptual in nature. They're really high level to give you an idea about what it could look like in either scenario. Some of the elements you might like in one scenario, some elements you might not like in that scenario. But we're not going to be designing this today. What this is going to give us the ability to do is have a better understanding of how this can continue to be a special place in either scenario. So how people can engage with the water in either scenario. So, certainly feedback in terms of what people like and don't like, but we're not going to dive into designing this from here. So just want that to be an important piece. And the park improvement process itself, there could be an opportunity to tie it into what the select board would recommend for a town meeting to take action on, but that would be a separate process in designing the park. So there'll be further public engagement. Funding would be required for that, and there would be a design process for that. So, typically with most design processes, you take something from conceptual design, which we'll talk about today. And then if we were to move forward with park improvements in the future, we would be getting into a design process where there would be further public engagement. Just wanted to let everyone know about that process. I will now turn it over to Iris with Halverston and Ty and Bond Studio to go through some of the work that she and her team were able to do in looking at these concept elements.
Okay.
Iris, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here. My name is Iris Lin. I'm a senior landscape architect in Halverston Ty and Bond Studio. And Halverston's scope is to visualize the potential site improvement of the dam area in either dam repair or dam removal scenario, like John mentioned. Next page. Okay, next page. Yeah, and through the past meetings and survey, we understand that these features of site are well loved by the residents, and it includes a historical context of the surrounding area, the sound and the sight of the spillway waterfall, and the picturesque setting of the stone bridge and the surrounding nature. And also the area is also the few places in Natick that people have chance to get close to Charles River. And also people really enjoy the scenery and the mature tree growth at the Grove Park. Next. And we also heard feedback from residents about what could be improved. The first one is accessibility, because there's a very limited of accessible pace that allow this area to be enjoyed by people with different level of abilities. So such as the steep walkway between Mill Lane and the Overlook. Yeah, so the idea is to improve the accessibility at these two areas. And there are also safety concerns that include a disrepair guardrail that doesn't provide a sufficient protection, and also the dam structure. And we also heard that people would like to have more physical access to the river, such as a kayak deck, or where people can dip their toes in the water. And also the existing landform along the river limited the use and activity. So the idea is kind of like make this place more usable and can accommodate more program use. And the rich history of indigenous activity and colonial period industrial development in the 18th and 19th century in this area could be celebrated through different forms. And also like the ecological resource and habitat could be enhanced and restored while doing the improvement. Next. So the next few slides show the existing condition that I'm sure everyone is like very familiar. So we can keep going. Yeah, that's the South Natick Dam at the upstream view. And next, yeah, that's the existing view of the Grove Park at the dam. Next. Yeah, and that's the view of the Grove Park. And so the next one. So based on the analysis and the feedback, we envision like 4 big ideas for the future development. The first one is the access to the river. Like we would like to create like visual and physical access to the river, such as adding a boat ramp, fishing deck, or like boulder in shallow waters and or terrace. They can lead people to engage with the river. And next. And also we would like think it's important to create opportunity for new programs and make this area a destination for people to stay and to spend time with family and friends. It can provide the new opportunity for passive recreation or serve as an outdoor space for library. Next. And we also think it's important to preserve and create new open space that for recreation and public gathering. Next. And then importantly, we think it's important to integrate the climate resilience strategy that consider the effect of the climate change and and propose some integrated solution with like durable material and help to mitigate adverse effect of sea level rise and excess stormwater event. Next. So I'm going to show the design concept and the rendering of the dam repair. And please know that these concepts show ideas that what this area could look like, but doesn't mean that if the dam repair option is chosen, that the design will be implemented. Okay, next. So at the north side of the dam, a new staircase is proposed to connect Millland and to the existing overlook with seating element on the slope. And also like we think that the accessible pace can be achieved from the intersection of the present street to the overlook and even like further up to the like where the current side walkway is. Yeah. And through a series of ramp that we could create a accessible pace that bring people to the new seating area at the downstream, at the north side. And for the south side of the dam, based on the study of the dam engineer, the repair will require all the existing tree to be removed. So here we show that the current pine tree grove it become like got removed and then become an open lawn area that allow children to play, or it could host a small community event. And then we think that a stone terrace seawall could be work as a new embankment for the dam between the new open lawn and the river edge, that it provide opportunity for people to engage with the river. And then 2 boat ramp are proposed, one at the upstream and one at the downstream, that allow people to continue their journey along the river. And next. And these slides show various precedent image to convey the proposed ideas, like an open lawn for a small event and stone terrace seating along the river, or like some like granite block on the slope, and also the opportunity to do an interpretive sign for the local ecology or the history of the site. Yes, and then next. So this is a rendering that show the view of the dam and the Grove Park. You can see that the terrace wall they bring people down to the water's edge, and assume that the overlook area and the dam area is repaired, and the open lawn here is after the removal of the existing tree. And the tree behind is the intent to show that existing tree that remain along the roadway of Pleasant Street. So next. And this one is the view showing the South Natick Dam Park, that new seating area is created and connected by series of ramp to the corner of the Pleasant Street. So like there's a new area where people can sit and cross to the river. And then there's the existing overlook is shown as a background, and also like a wood decking behind that. They could be have like several levels, and then people can also bring kayak to this area. Okay, and so similar to the dam repair, I'm going to show the design concept for dam removal. And it shows what this area could look like once the dam is removed, but doesn't mean that this is the design that will be implemented. Okay, next. So based on the engineer study, if the dam were removed, the river will be lower and narrower. And there will be more like riverbank area for new use. And the existing tree at Grove Park will be remained. So in this rendering, it shows that at the north side of the river, an accessible path is proposed. They connect Pleasant Street intersection to the boat ramp in the north. Then an open long slope toward the river, and people can access the river by the terrace seawall. An overlook area and a large wood platform with furniture is proposed further north. They can accommodate larger group activity, such as an outdoor performance or activity hosted by the library. And between the platform and the new river edge, boulders and planting could be used to create a naturalistic edge. And at the south side of the river, the existing trees are preserved, and the wood deck are proposed near water level that allow for fishing and other activities. And in this scheme, boulders are proposed as strategic location. They can replace the current waterfall, but I think it can still provide a soothing effect of the river. And a bulwark is shown here in this option to show that it can connect the Grove Park to the town preservation land at the north. Yeah. So next. So the next page. Yeah, the present image to show like the shallow water at the river bank, and also like elevated bulwark with new aquatic planting that help to create habitat. Yeah, and also image of the boat ramp or like sitting near the river bank. And next. And so this image show the view of the dam and the Grove Park with the new wood decking and the bulwark and additional like planting area on the new river bank. Next. And this one is showing the view of the South Natick Dam Park that with the terrace down seawall that people can get close to the river, and then elevated wooden platform behind, and between the wood platform and the new water level, there will be like planting and border to create a naturalistic riverbank. Okay, so next. Yeah, I think that's it of my presentation.
Thank you so much. Let's, I think, take down the slides, although people may want to refer to them and bring them back up. Committee, we were trying to imagine these. We've been trying to imagine them for a long time and trying to talk ourselves into either option could be beautiful. There are a lot of functions that could occur in either case. As you will have seen, some of the things that could happen in different places could work in either case, even though Iris laid out 2 different versions. So what do you see? What do you want to share with the group? What are you thinking about? Questions for Iris? Becca, go ahead.
So this is a specific thing, but one of the things that had come up as a suggestion at some point was a bridge or a footbridge. Was that something that was explored as something that was feasible? Or are there any reasons why that wouldn't be able to happen? Again, I know it's all just ideas, but structurally and, you know.
Yeah, I think it would be nice if we can create a connection between the South Natick Park and the Grove Park, because currently the sidewalk is on the other side of the present street. Yeah, but I think it's a matter of the budgeting and like where the connection should happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anybody else on the project team want to respond to that? And we know that that was one of the members' letters from the public today. Also was about that. Bridge concept.
I'd just jump in a little bit and just say, you know, this is not all inclusive in terms of ideas or thoughts. It's really conceptual in nature. So there were some good ideas that we heard, but we felt it more appropriate to just show some of the ideas of what it could look like, recognizing that we would need to take a deeper dive into design and kind of engineering with whatever approach we took.
Thank you. Beth and then Mike.
So one thing that actually came up last night in our meeting at the Park and Rec Commission was the maintenance of parks in town and how hard it's to keep, you know, the parks in good shape. And so, you know, certainly materials that we use are important. And I just want, like, some of the areas look like wood deck. I don't know if we would use wood or what materials would, but hopefully we would keep in mind that, you know, maintaining different parks is something that we need to keep in mind, and is something that is hard for us to do today. The second question, I don't know if this is necessarily in reference to specific park, although the park is not in our purview, would it make economic sense, or could it, to do the park plan at the same time of either you know, either idea of removing the spillway or repairing the spillway?
I can take it.
Thank you.
Sorry. So I think it makes sense, Seth. I think what we just wanted to illustrate in the conversation today is that we don't have funding for park design and park work at this point. So, you know, either through grant funding or going back through town meeting, we would need to secure that funding. The funding the town had received prior at town meeting was really for a repair option. And, you know, repairing of the dam, it didn't have additional elements to add to that work. So I think in whatever path forward is chosen, we would just have to, you know, identify the money that was needed and then, you know, either get that through grant funding or seek additional appropriation through town meeting to be able to complete the work. But I think an opportunity to sync that up with the work that's going to happen definitely makes sense.
And just to note about the materials, that's definitely been something that's been considered coming from the conservation perspective too. I know budget is always the big issue. There are a number of great alternatives, sort of commonly referred to as Trex. It's sort of a plastic composite wood alternative that doesn't have the same maintenance requirements as traditional wood, nor does it have the same contamination concerns that some pressure treated timber can come with. So there's definitely alternatives to sort of traditional wood to ensure that the maintenance is as minimal as possible.
Right. And then I guess the last comment is, you know, how does this all play in with the multi-use court, you know, down the street on Pleasant Street that can be connected to this area and has always been a sort of a standalone area. And once again, maybe that could be part of, you know, the project plan, and obviously we'll need funding if it is.
I think that's a great point, Seth. I mean, I think anything can be packaged together going forward. I think, we were just trying to illustrate the fact of what we had funding for at this point, and just wanted to let everyone know that really park improvements and enhancements at this point, we don't have the budget, so we would have to go back. But I think the idea of packaging the different areas down there definitely makes sense. And I think we can align that from a process standpoint going forward. And then stick it with not stick it, but, have the right boards and committees review and look at that along with town administration.
Thank you both. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Those were some nice renderings. It's nice to see that the possibilities are there for access, and you can see a lot more people sharing time at that place in our town comfortably than they currently can. So that's nice to know. I guess I look at this from a homeowner or a private citizen. If I'm going to improve my property, it's different. I would do it in a different way. You would kind of get your wish list, create the budget of what you want to spend on that, and then move forward. Where this is kind of, well, let's do the project and then figure out the budget through either grants or what the town meeting and select board thinks the town will swallow. So I know it's a struggle. I don't have any answer to it. It is what it is. Like, I think as a committee, if we come up with a recommendation to say repair the spillway or repair the dam, we may, ultimately the town may not spend anything on it, and it may look terrible, and then that ultimately would have been the wrong decision. So, and conversely the other way too. So I think budget is intimately related to this on what the town is willing to do. And I know we're early in the process because it's got to go through the select board and town meeting. They'll have to tackle that. And in that regard, I think a footbridge, as I've mentioned a while back, I think makes complete sense to connect it all as one park system. And other people have brought up that multi-use park. So, and those are all budget decisions, not something that is in our purview. So I guess I'm struggling with how do I make a decision on this kind of binary decision when there's so many budgetary and decisions on design and things and so forth ahead of us that would influence that. So that's kind of my overall comment. I love the on the removal renderings, the ability to have sandy direct access, kind of like a beach in quotes, with the river, that without the spillway, there's that danger component that's removed. And so really taking advantage of that is nice. I think, of course, the balance between access and safety still has to be there because high water events still happen, and that river can move pretty quick. Wherever you are along the river at certain times. And in the repair of the dam, I think connecting a launch above and below, a safe launch area for kayaks and canoes, make complete sense, so that although it wouldn't be navigable still, you could still, port very easily. And if the design allowed that, that would be great. So those are my comments, but I still, I love seeing the potential, and I love that the town, anyone who's tuning in, gets to see some potential ideas and so forth. But there's still a huge gap of what our decision is, and ultimately what it will look like, and what resources we commit to the parks.
Thank you. So I have Martin, and then Terry, and then David Lodding.
I'm getting a whole lot of impressions and ideas, but I'll spill out a couple right now. And one thing I kind of liked is the terraced stone going down to the water in both designs. That's a pretty cool idea. And in particular for the dam repair, the that those stone terraces are replacing the riprap that so many people hated in the original plans that we saw. And from what I heard with the engineers based on our site visit, there are alternatives to riprap that can be something really nice like that. So I think exciting. One thing that I went through the survey with the 980 person survey again today. At least I flipped through a lot of the comments. And one thing that I saw there pretty strongly is that people want something simple, natural, not elaborate. So I think some of the things that we saw with like 100 people in various other places in a park by the water is not really what we're going to have in Natick. So, and I realized that a lot of the elements, a lot of the structural elements, the boardwalks and the surfaces are ideas, and we don't have to do them all. We can do something simpler. So I'm going to see how that evolves and what people really want. One question that I had though is one of the missing pieces in evaluating spillway removal versus repair is the cost of the two options. And I had always thought that it would be more costly for removing the spillway because we'd have a lot of new wetlands, perhaps a lot of new area along the river that wasn't there before, and things would have to be totally redone. So my question is whether you can say that one option is more costly than the other in terms of parts. And I did notice particularly that in the dam, the dam removal option on the south side in Grove Park, there were boardwalks taking you out to the water, which I think is something that would probably be necessary because although we haven't totally been told whether that's going to be solid ground or wetlands, I believe a lot of it's going to be wetlands. So the boardwalks are going to be important to get people out there. So anyway, a long prelude, but is there any inherent costliness, one option being more costly than the other in terms of removal or repair?
So we are going to be addressing the cost aspect at our next meeting in association with the Stantec report. And so we've got some numbers from GZA and the Stantec report that are all going to help inform that cost discussion. Those materials haven't been finalized yet, so I can't give a firm answer, but the answer is coming.
Yeah, Claire, I think you may be talking about the cost of actually doing the work of removal or repair, but I was talking about the park, what kind of park has to be put in afterwards, whether it's going to be more costly in terms of the necessary park elements.
I think because these are all sort of very conceptual designs and no final decisions have been made on what the actual infrastructure that would be installed is, I don't know if we could make a determination at this point which would be the more costly option.
Let's see, Iris, is there any reason you can think of that a site that had a dam versus one that still has a dam would cost different for parks design?
I don't know the answer for that, but I just want to say that like on the dam removal option, like do it more elaborate, like create more like amenity space, then probably in reality we probably may only keep few of them. So I feel like in two options, because I don't know the dam removal cost and dam repair cost purely, is like which one is much more. But I think for the site improvement, I think I think it could be big or small. I think it's based on the budget, and I think the idea I propose could be used on either of them in the appropriate scale. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Martin. Let's go to Terry and then David Lotting and then Mike.
Thank you. And I guess I'll say briefly, I'm trying not to look at the specific, the very precise amenities. Here's exactly how it will look. There was the list that Iris, that you put up and said, here are the things we heard that people said they loved and that they thought were really important. And so I find myself wanting almost to treat it like a checklist to say, how does this amenity, does this, do the sorts of things that are being proposed here in some combination, how effective are they at answering those questions about the things people consider important? And so, and if there's a sense of priority in those that on that list, you know, how does that work? I mean, so we get away a bit from something as precise as materials and even dimensions, and just start saying, will this capture that feeling of, you know, kind of tranquility or other things? So just I'm trying to calculate it on that, because I understand the devil's in the details, but you don't want to get so close to the details that you're missing this bigger sense of, do these components accomplish what we're trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
And I'll say that, and then just very briefly, I think this has a lot of opportunities to serve a lot of a different mix of demands and aspirations for the community. And it'd just be useful to kind of go back through that, and maybe we should each do it in our own time and kind of go, how do I feel what's proposed here addresses that? Does it cover the things that I think need to be covered? I'm biased. I love the idea of taking over the old basketball court and like putting a boathouse there where we have like kayaks, because that was in the open space and recreation plan once upon a time. So anyway, it's going back to what was the aspiration? How is this responding to it? Does that put it on target?
Yeah, as designer and also for this project, I try to be like very objective, thinking it's like two projects and with the base and the same goal. So like I try to propose like the dam removal one, it has that open long, dam repair. It has that open long because the tree removal requirement. So on the dam removal one, I try to create an open space on the north side. So vice versa, I try to create like some eco element that could be used in either scenario. But I have to say that I feel like in the dam removal option, there will be more available land for different opportunity. I think that's the reality of it. And also the opportunity for new, like planting along the river and make it more naturalistic. Yes.
Great, thank you. David, and then Mike.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I thought in the example where the dam repair. So I thought it was interesting that the design showed that you're not going to have to clear cut the whole area, that there were trees along Pleasant Street and looked like there were trees in the Grove area. I'm not sure if they were still the big pines, but there were trees there. So it's not like you're just going to go in and destroy all of the trees. It was just the trees were missing on the area of the actual dam. And really, if you look, it seems to me that there's an advantage there because you open up the ability to the view of the upstream river. Anyway, I noticed that. The other thing is what Martin mentioned, I guess in both of them, is when you're thinking about providing river access, it just strikes me that river, Mike said, that goes up and down, and yeah, it sure does. Just seasonally, I think it goes maybe more than a couple of feet, and then in storm situations, it can go more than 3, I guess. So that would be kind of, you'd have to take that into consideration when you're creating the walkways or walk-in access areas or whatever. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill, can I ask you, do you want to clarify the trees question, just like where you could have trees and where you couldn't?
Sure.
I think we know that that's so important.
Yeah, in the dam repair option, we would have to have all of the trees off of what was considered to be the earthen berm structure, which would be obviously the flat part, the upstream part, and the downstream part. What I think Iris was had kind of highlighted was that the trees along the Pleasant Street embankment, which is on the eastern side of the wetland, those trees could be either thinned or trees could be planted on that embankment. That is not part of the dam. So that idea of screening from Pleasant Street, still creating a kind of private space with the river on top of the dam and screening out Pleasant Street and the traffic on Pleasant Street is something that still could be done, but there cannot be any trees or any woody undergrowth on the dam structure itself. So that earthen structure that sticks out and ends with that stone entrainment wall at the fish ladder and at the valve, there's another lookout at that spot. All of those trees would have to be taken, including the ones on the downstream side down by where people fish. But the trees that Iris did show on that were meant to be trees that were on that Pleasant Street embankment, which we would be able to either thin some of the trees that were there and plant others, or that's something that we could cultivate as part of that park, which was something we had said before, understanding that it's that screening away from the street was important to a lot of the upstream abutters. That could be replanted, but there cannot be anything planted on the earthen berm itself.
Thank you. Mike, and then David, do you have a response directly to that?
Yeah.
I would like, go ahead before we bring Mike in.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, Bill, but that seemed to show that you were retaining some trees in what I guess I would call the grove area, which seems to be away from the flat part of the dam.
So again, I mean, the upstream and the downstream slopes are part of the dam. There is a wetland area, excuse me. As you go down, the downstream face of the Charles River Dam, you can see there is an inlet that backwaters around the bridge. Basically from that water's edge, if you think of that up to the top of the slope, that would all be without trees. And so if you're considering that downhill portion of the dam as part of the grove area, we would not be able to replant that. Anything from the water edge up towards Pleasant Street, as you climb the embankment towards Pleasant Street, trees could be planted there.
I think it's important to David, just to clarify, these are conceptual renderings, so not necessarily an accurate representation. So I don't know if we should necessarily get too hung up on the trees that are shown in these renderings, just because they are conceptual designs.
No, I understand all that. I understand what Bill said. So Bill, I guess the area down to the neighboring fence on the south of that area, is that how far toward that chain link fence? How much of that is considered the dam?
That's actually a question that's been asked several times of ODS. Where does the dam stop? When do I stop being a dam and I start being ground?
Yeah.
We don't have an opinion on that. I do believe, and speaking to GZA, haven't spoken to Stantec regarding their experience with dams, just to get another opinion on that. They believe that several of those trees could stay. If you're considering that the grove area where I park and then walk in onto the dam, that pine needle area, we don't really have a determination on that, or what would be considered, where does the dam end and where does it become, just the earth?
Yeah.
But that is something that needs to be clarified with ODS. Their initial impression, the initial impression of GZA was everything goes. Everything is considered to be part of the dam. We believe we have a little bit of movement on that from ODS, but I don't have a clear answer for that. For those really, those are prettier, a little bit like lodgepole pine kind of things. Some of those may be able to stay.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Thank you.
Okay.
David, thanks, Bill. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Just to follow up on that one, I think that's a pretty critical opinion to get on those trees between that property, and because that really affects kind of the southerly view. I know there was one rendering where all those trees were gone, so the house was, you were looking right at that house. So that, but just on another point, I think costs are something that, as we're looking at design possibilities and the costs associated, we're kind of outside of that conversation here, although obviously it's a critical conversation. But there's also costs of liability. And one thing that I was just looking at, I know historically that, when they created the spillway, part of the goal of public recreation was to have a swimming kind of opportunity above the spillway. And that quickly didn't, come to fruition for obvious reasons, because, you don't want people swimming above a waterfall. and I think that's still the same case. I mean, I see the rickrack. If we are having complete access to the river right there, I can't imagine being a parent with kids running around there where they could just jump right into a moving water that's going right over a waterfall. So I don't think, you know, as we look at design and possibilities, ultimately, my opinion is I don't think the town would make that a possibility, that we would have kind of that kind of swim and easy access to the river. I think having a dock a little bit farther upstream where kayaks can come in and then port on the other side of the spillway makes sense. But I think if we really wanted to use the river as kind of a place where we can get our feet wet and things like that, it would be with spillway removal. And I guess that's, you know, Iris's comment that the removal gives kind of more design opportunities. I think that is just another point in that regard. So just something to think about.
Thanks, David. Just something to mention that is one of the last aspects, and probably what ODS would be considering maybe the least important as far as a dam maintenance project, is that we would be required to install buoys as a safety, you know, before people got to the dam. So were we to maintain the dam, there would be some form of barrier, floating barrier there to keep people from, you know, pitching over the spillway. And not to say that would be put in there in support of or in aid of making that into a swimming hole. It's just something that would be required if we keep the spillway, you know, both for boaters or anybody else who might be in the river, that there would be some form of warning buoy prior to the actual spillway itself.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Jillian, and then I want to invite, there are a few people who haven't spoken up yet, and I want to just invite you, if you want to let me know. Chris, David Yancey, Janine, Seth, and Claire, I don't think you've jumped in. You are very welcome. Jillian, go ahead.
I wanted to say thank you to the Halverson team for their design work. I think that one big takeaway for me is that this place can achieve those list of desired outcomes that were presented at the beginning of the meeting, that we heard in our January 25th meeting, the things that the community really wants. Like in either option, we can have that. I believe that I feel like we can preserve the beauty of this place and address issues that we would like to see addressed through either project. I think to others' point, it depends on how much money the town is willing to spend in terms of how much we can do, right? So that is always tricky for any public project that happens in Natick. I am wanting to make sure we're all on the same page about this tree question, because I feel like I don't want that to be just like looming out there if it's not going to be resolved, or I didn't realize it was really up for debate. I'm sure this is like kind of rogue of me, but I included the link to the May presentation that was given last year, like when we just started, and it shows in it on page 15, the design plan for dam repair that GZA had prepared, and that has been presented several times and was first presented in 2019. And it does show those trees being removed. So I'm just curious, like, is there actually the intent to edit this design, or is the assumption that we should be making as a committee that this is the design in terms of the trees that would have to be removed? And I guess it's a question for Bill, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot like that, Bill.
No, that's fine, because actually when we met with members of, it was not DER, I'm trying to remember, it's Department of Fisheries or something, we had asked that question. I'm sorry, it's Army Corps. We had asked that question, when does the dam stop being a dam? And, you know, are some of these trees over here maintainable? And they didn't give me a direct answer at the time. And he said, yeah, there may be. We will absolutely get that clarified. And we can clarify that based on the design that we have. We can actually, you know, enumerate a certain number of trees that would be able to stay. GZA just took the conservative approach and said there are no trees on the dam, and so showed that within their design. And that was the original intent, was to remove all of the trees from the tip of the dam at the spillway all the way back to that property line, to the fence. So that what would have included those pine trees. Those were also included in the 64 trees that were noted in the count. So as of right now, that design still stands. If we could maintain some of those trees, that would definitely be something I would be interested in, just for not deforesting the entire area and being able to leave those up. But again, the question remains, I do not have an answer for you, and we have not had an answer from above as to what would be allowed. But that would be something we would go through as part of the permitting process. If the repair option was chosen, how many of those, may we maintain?
Thank you. Janine and then Martin.
I'm sorry, can I ask just one more follow-up? And that's, so if it's part of the permitting process, that would happen after this committee's recommendation, right? So I just want to make sure we all have our expectations in terms of what final information we'll have if we're planning on making a recommendation in July.
Yes, that to the best of my knowledge, that would happen during the permitting process.
And I think I forget who said the sort of when is a dam not a dam question is a new framing of it. Like, where geographically are we talking about that? So we'll think about that between now and our next meeting and try to pick this up again. I'm sorry, Janine. Thanks for your patience. Go ahead. You're muted. Janine, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Iris, I'd like to thank you for your vision, and I do feel these are really important steps in terms of engaging the community in what might be and how exciting it is to see the possibilities for either or version. So thank you for that. And I was curious, is this a wrap for your engagement in this process? What is the next step, if any, on the landscape architect input?
Yeah, thank you. It is the end of our effort for this phase. Yes.
And construction, either breach or repair, it leaves a scar, it leaves a mess. So this cannot really dangle unresolved in the short term. It has to go hand in hand with this effort. So, and I had a few questions. One was about the fish. On behalf of the fish, I'm still concerned that we address that they be able to circulate upstream and spawn. Is that something that, is that a design feature of what you drew, Iris?
Yes, the intent for the dam repair is to keep that feature. But I think based on the presentation previously, that feature will be improved to make it feasible for fish to go through. Yeah.
So
yeah, Jillian, do you want to add into that? I know, Jillian, you're tracking that.
I'll defer to Claire, who shared the fish passage info earlier.
I was just gonna say, Janine, the actual fish ladder improvements would be a part of the engineer plans that are developed as a part of a repair scenario, if that's how the town moves forward. It would be outside of the scope of Iris functioning as a landscape architect.
Okay.
And her drawings don't show that sort of enhanced fish ladder right now.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Janine.
Lastly, I wanted to ask on behalf of the Native Americans and the history, colonial history, how do you envision bringing something for everyone to these settings? In what capacity would those things be celebrated? Might be. Do you have
My-
thoughts about it? That's my question.
Yeah, my initial idea is some form of interpretive signage, but they could be not just visual signage. Like I know that we work with a graphic design and signage designer that she know a lot of form, like more physically or like sculptural type of things. They could be celebrate the history in different way. Yeah. But I think they could be a different a separate project that involve with indigenous people and also may be historian and artist to be like brainstorming like what else we can bring people to understand the history.
Yeah, that's definitely an interest from many on the committee, including our NETMUC representatives and many members of the public. Thank you, Janine, for naming that. Martin, jump in.
Yes, I'm going to jump in way above my pay grade and try to venture an answer to when is the dam a dam. I looking at open space maps all the time. The Isabella Shaw donated the land on the south side of the river in 1934. And on the plan for that donation, most of what's now Grove Park was the river. So I assume the dam had not been built yet. But if you look on the current town parcel map, there's about 50 feet near the fence that is a different parcel. And that was part of the Isabella Shaw donation. So I assume that was land before the dam was built. And I would say that maybe that's not part of the dam by that reasoning.
Thank you.
That's it.
Anyone who hasn't had a chance to speak after seeing these concepts and ideas put before us?
I just had a question for you, Ona, like since you have experience facilitating these things and sometimes where there's not all the information, and like Mike's point really struck me. I'm wondering what kind of guidance you have for us, knowing that like we won't have full cost for design for either option for the park improvements, and we won't have all the list of like what the town will approve for park improvements. So I struggle with that too. And I wonder if you have any words of wisdom.
Yeah, it might not be a super satisfying answer. Like this committee has gathered really a lot of information about a lot of different things. There will be more information at the next meeting. And the plan is for that to be the end of our like new information in, right? So that we can shift to deliberation in part because my sense is, somebody's going to disagree with me, but my sense is we've tried to answer as many of the questions as possible that have come up, many times and that have been important to people. Some of the answers have been frustrating, right? And we can't kind of predict the future, right? We can't predict designs down the path with specificity. We don't know how much park investment there would be, for example. But I believe, and you all, I think most of you said you feel like you have enough information, or you will at the end of June, to make a decision on the key question that you are here to make a decision about. Otherwise, things could go on forever because there will always be more information to gather. And I think efficiency was one of our things we named as something we wanted for this committee. And I don't know what everybody would say on whether we've been efficient or not, but it feels like we're getting to the end of our process to me, and I think to others. Becca, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'd say to that question, to follow up what you said, I'm going back, Jillian, to what you said in terms of what these theoretical designs showed us was that both options can be beautiful. And I think, Mike, going back to what you said earlier of how do we know if it's going to be pretty? Like we just kind of, there's a trust the process piece here, I think a bit. And I think what really resonates with me when I was looking at the projects that the 8th graders at Wilson Middle School did, where they really explored this issue and they boiled down their public comments to these really key points. And I think we keep getting into the details and the weeds and trying to figure out what's what. But that was really helpful for me to go through and read those comments on what were the issues that resonated to them. It was cost and it was safety. It was, being true to the Indigenous perspective. It was understanding the environmental impacts. That's what mattered to them. And I think to get up on my soapbox, we so often say of the younger generation, we need them to save us. And totally don't think that's an appropriate thing to put on their shoulders. But, this is an opportunity where they were engaged in this. And they, I bet we could put them up next to most town people to explain how they understand the issues, and they're going to come out on top because they studied this as part of their course. And I just want to respect that process that they went through and hope that they feel empowered in their participation. So I kind of went around with my little thing, but that's it.
Bill, go ahead. And in a few minutes, I'm going to check in on public comment and make sure that we're timely about that. Bill, go ahead.
Thank you. So just to note, and this was brought up before, and I think Janine was the one who said it, if we did any work on either the repair option or on the breach, the spillway option, as the contractor left either the dam side or the North Park side, they would be required to do a fair amount of cleanup afterwards as they were leaving for any access roads or things like that, haul roads that they needed to create in order to do the work that they were doing. So a lot of the shaping of the ground will be done, at a basic level, certainly not at an aesthetic level, and certainly not to the degree that Iris showed us the ability to do that. But if we had an idea of what we wanted to do, there will be a fair amount of restoration and regrading of either one of those parks, either the dam itself or on the north side of the river, as part of the cleanup process. And those who went to North Andover and saw the area where they had done the work on the dam, one of the questions I brought up was, how did they access this? And they noted that, as the contractor left, he cleaned the area up and then the area just naturally revegetated. And you literally could not see where they accessed the dam. So, that idea of trust the process, there's a certain amount of process that is our own cleanup as we leave a construction site that would have to occur, that could be in support of beautification projects later. But again, we're not just going to walk away and leave like a scar. And I completely understand the sentiment of the scar, but it would not be left in that state. And part of the construction process is the cleanup afterwards.
I just want to sort of bolster what Bill said, that as part of the wetlands permitting through the Conservation Commission, sort of construction, operation, and maintenance is going to be a big part of their review, as well as post-construction site stabilization. So that's something that the commission will be conditioning and requiring as part of that permit closeout process to ensure that the site isn't left a mess. Not that I think the town would, but.
I think we want to go to public comment, although I feel like there's such nice energy right now. It's hard to sort of pause. Let's take John, final comment or question, and then we'll go to our public comment. Members of the public, if you're hearing this, if you would like to make public comment, you can have 2 to 3 minutes. And if you could just click on that raise hand button, we'll know you want to speak. John, go ahead.
So just in terms of the recommendation that the committee will make to the select board going forward, there's also an opportunity in that recommendation to recognize that there might have to be some type of modest enhancement to the park. And I think that the committee can certainly do that. We're not going to be able to drill down on the exact number, but to say, we feel there needs to be a range of X amount of dollars to do some type of enhancement along with this work, that's certainly appropriate to recommend to the board. So I don't want the committee to think it's just this or just that. I think it's more important to recognize that it's not the task of the committee to dive into the specifics of the elements that's going to happen. But certainly suggesting that a pot of money should be set aside to make enhancements in either option, I think makes sense.
Thank you. Nice note to end on. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Iris, so much for all your work and for listening to what the public and the committee were interested in seeing and sharing that with us. And thanks, everyone, for that great discussion. Members of the public, time for public comment. Right now I see Leslie Pano, Brad Peterson, and David Parrish, and Ian Mavora. If you would like to make public comment, please do raise your virtual hand, and we will start with Leslie, and you have 3 minutes you can have if you would like, and we will allow you to speak. Go ahead, Leslie.
Okay, my name is Leslie Pano. I live at 8 Merrill Road, and I did speak at one of the earlier meetings about my concern about removal of the dam and possible flooding. The GZA presentation on page 46 showed the 100-year flood inundation area post-dam to include my garage, part of my backyard, most of my side yard, and my neighbor's house at 4 Merrill Road. I questioned that, and someone indicated that although the slide didn't show it, that there really wasn't going to be any difference from what it currently was. So I actually contacted a CAD GIS specialist who provided me with a current FEMA flood map, and it doesn't look anything like the drawing, what they say it's going to be post-dam removal. Looking at the map, the flood zone barely gets into the river side of the baseball fields and doesn't get anywhere near my property or the property of my neighbors. So I'm just going to say it again. I'm very concerned. I oppose removal of the dam. I don't want to risk flooding. I don't want to have to pay for flood insurance that I don't have to now. And I'm going to ask again that we reconsider removal of the dam and consider that as not a viable option. That's it.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you. I wonder, Bill, maybe after public comment, if there's still time, I might have you one more time clarify the kind of flooding from natural events versus inundation from the dam, from a dam failure. Brad Peterson, go ahead. Brad, you should be able to unmute. Yeah,
Hi there, you able to hear me?
we are.
Okay, great. So yeah, Brad Peterson, 7 Dover Road. I live not too far from the dam and have been involved in this process as a member of the public. I think it's absolutely wonderful that we're now able to look at professionally done conceptual renderings of either option. It really gives people, all those involved in the process, a glimpse of what might be in the future. Although some previous speakers have brought up some very important points that those conceptual renderings are dependent on funding from the town. And at the moment, there is no funding from the town. They're sort of giant wish lists in a vacuum. And now that I think about it, it could have been more helpful to, in fact, do professional renderings of either option if there was no material funding from the town, because that's a very likely outcome. Either of those options seemed wonderful, but I can only imagine may run into millions of dollars. And I wonder what it would be like to go to the town meeting and seek funding, millions of dollars of funding for, a park in South Natick. And it was interesting to hear the gentleman from the town talk about the committee perhaps recommending funding for modest enhancement of either option after the work is being done. So it's sort of closing comments. I think the conceptual renderings are wonderful. I was really happy to see them, but just completely concerned and terrified that there won't be any money to do either of those things. And I think the committee will really have to contemplate in their decision as to whether it's one or the other, as to what it would look like absent any material funding from the town. Those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad. David Parrish, you have the floor. You should be able to unmute now.
How about now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Well, first of all, congratulations and thanks to everyone for all the work that you're doing on this. I mean, this is a very difficult issue. I'm going to take a couple of minutes and read a letter that we submitted, which I think most people have probably not seen. Richard Moon, a friend and designer also, we've talked to many people about this issue, and some of the discussions were quite emotional. And so just let me do this quickly. The future of the dam and spillway of the Charles River is a contentious issue, to put it mildly. There are very strong emotions about whether to remove or retain the spillway. We are writing to urge consideration of an approach that may somewhat reconcile these competing interests and provide the sense of place that so many feel for the present park and spillway, a bridge over troubled water. The two of us have been involved with design and finance issues for many years. We've concluded that the underlying economic, environmental, and cultural issues argue for removing the spillway. However, we are very aware of the extreme sense of loss many may feel that this direction is recommended. When people in Natick came together to build the spillway and dam on the river, they hoped to create a place of distinction, a place to gather and enjoy the beauty of the river. And for many people, they succeeded far beyond expectations. The current dam and spillway have a strong draw. The graceful curve of the spillway, the sound of the rushing water, the tranquil water above the large trees on the dam combine to create a sense of place, a place for enjoyment and contemplation. However, for many others, the dam on the Queenabagan is an interference with the natural flow of the river that disregards the history of the area, a history of use, conflict, and loss. It is difficult to imagine two more different cultures than the Native Americans and Puritans who met on the land along the river in the area that we now call Natick. But it is possible to imagine that the world might be entirely different if the resulting dialogue had focused on understanding rather than conversion. We urge consideration of the construction of a bridge between the north and south shore of the river, a structure that would reiterate the arc of the present spillway, a bridge, excuse me for a moment. A bridge between the north and south part of the river, a structure that would reiterate the arc of the present spillway, a bridge in the middle connected by a section of clear glass that would allow a direct view of the river below, a bridge to serve as a reminder of the history of the site and of the connections still to be made. A bridge would unite the two sides of the river without a perilous walk along an unpleasant section of Pleasant Street, and invite the development of the land on the south side of the river as a place that would represent a part of the culture of the Native Americans who lived and still live in and around Natick. The town, its institutions, and its residents need to not merely recognize the past, but make an ongoing commitment to learn from what existed, what happened, and how a more profound understanding might shape our future. Natick has an opportunity to create both a practical and symbolic connection that will serve as an ongoing reminder of the need to consider the past and imagine the future, to make a statement that understanding and compromise can merge memory and hope. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, David.
All right, I just got bumped off the audio for a second. Thank you, Maggie. And now we go to Ian Lavora. Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you, Mona. Good evening, everyone. And I want to say thank you for all of your careful work on this topic. I'm here to read into the record a summary of a letter that was written by 9 of my clergy colleagues and myself. I'm the director of the Common Street Spiritual Center in Natick, also a resident, town meeting member. Our statement is titled Honoring the Quinobaquin, a statement in support of removal of the dam in South Natick. And in summary, I'll say that we were all very moved by a presentation made to this committee by Kristen Wyman, member of the Natick Nipmuc Council. And we believe that as a matter of justice and equity, we need to listen more carefully to Nipmuc voices and perspectives, and that they should carry extra weight in this committee's deliberations and ultimate recommendations. Our opinion about the river was very much informed by Kristen Wyman's perspective, but it was also informed by other environmental and ethical reasons, all pointing towards the restoration of the river. We believe that that is the most ethical choice. According to everything we've heard, it's also the most cost-effective and the best for the environment. And we believe that removing the spillway will be best for trees, for fish, for the health of the river as a whole. We want to acknowledge the sacredness of water and the sacredness of the river. And we hope that this committee will take that into account. We also hope the committee will consider that Indigenous people have consistently opposed the practice of damming rivers for the many reasons that have been discussed, especially related to the environment and the sanctity of the river. And we think that it's time for the town of Natick to recognize and adopt this perspective, a perspective from Indigenous people who have been more connected to the land and the waters here and have more of a sense of how we can honor the river properly. So with humility, I think we should be listening and we should be following a new way of thinking. So we do hope the committee will make a recommendation to restore the river, and that the restoration process must be one that is respectful to the history, values, and rights of Indigenous people. I think that I deeply respect the work of this committee, and I do want to echo something said earlier tonight about the broad strokes, the big issues, the environment, cost, the relationship with Indigenous people, some of the key moral and ethical issues that I think we need to take into account and see this as an opportunity to depart from a kind of colonialist perspective and way of being that might be out of touch with the environmental realities. So I appreciate this committee so much. Thank you for all your work, and would ask on behalf of 9 other clergy in town who represent a lot of citizens, please recommend for the restoration of the river. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Final public comment from Sean. You should be able to unmute.
Great, can you hear me?
We can.
Great, thank you. I would just echo everyone's sentiments about just how valuable and respectful this committee has been. It really makes me proud to live in Natick. We also live on the very south end of Natick, enjoy the waterfall every week, the spillway, I should say. I was just thinking about some of the comments that have been made by the public here in terms of, I share some of the concerns earlier about whether town funding would be appropriated for a park. But I'm also, as someone who's very engaged with the Natick Community Organic Farm, who, as everyone knows, I'm sure, had their barn burned down last year. There's just been a groundswell of support in that instance for raising funds, independently of the town to restore that barn. And it just brought to my mind that maybe a similar process could occur here, given the investment so many have in the area, that perhaps there could be a parallel funding drive and not even having to wait for the town to provide funds for, restoration or creation of a nice park space if in fact the river is restored, which it seems as if many things are pointing toward that being the decision to be made. But just bringing it up as another idea to sort of think about, ways we can harness the local community and its resources, independent of the whole town of Natick, to say that this is something that we think, deserves a really important and well thought out and used space, regardless of the decision that's made about the spillway. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the 5 of you who spoke. We appreciate all of that so much. We are about to move into our next steps. I know I said we might go back to the flooding, the 2 different types of flooding. I think just given where we are in the time of the evening, I will just refer all of us back to the presentation at the beginning and this sort of complex difference between inundation from the dam breaking and all that water being released from rain, precipitation that goes over the dam. And I'm not going to get the details exactly right. That's like conceptually how I think of it. Committee members and members of the public, thank you all so much for your attention and engagement tonight. We are going to give committee members a chance to share any closing thoughts, and then we will adjourn. I'm going to do it in some sort of arbitrary way. I will call on you. Invite Becca and then Claire to share thoughts. Wait, Becca, are you there?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I feel like I just spoke in terms of, again, what's really resonated for me today is focusing on the beauty, focusing on these core pieces of this decision, but recognizing what is important and what are the values, and what is our responsibility. So that's where my head is right now.
Thank you. Sorry, I keep being glitchy. Claire and then Bill. Sorry, Claire, I think I interrupted you.
So I am in a very similar sort of mindset as Becca. I think putting a priority on ensuring that whatever space comes about as a result of this project is functional, accessible, beautiful, and meets the needs of the community is a priority for all of us here and for the town overall. I am really looking forward to sort of moving into the debate portion of this process. I think it's going to be a really fruitful experience for everyone, and I would just encourage folks to continue sort of maybe looking back at old presentations to sort of refresh information that might be heard a long time ago, and that if there are any questions, please do reach out to either Ona and Maggie or the town staff so that we can try and maybe answer some more of the technical questions that folks may have. We're definitely here as a resource for not only the committee members, but the members of the committee.
Thank you. Bill and then Seth.
I just want to thank all the committee members again. I know you guys are involved in a lot of other, town-oriented activities. I really appreciate that. I really get your commitment. I know we've had a lot of kibble all along the way. We thought we'd give you a little cupcake, and then Iris provided, the cupcake, so we can see that this actually can be beautiful in either scenario. So I really appreciate your patience, and I very much appreciate your participation.
Seth and then Jillian.
So I just want to comment regarding, funding of a potential opportunity. So it seems to me that once a decision is made, there's going to be some time until the project starts. And I'm not sure exactly what the timing will be with town meeting, but certainly it seems like we're going to need some funds for design after a decision is made, because without the design, you certainly couldn't go to town meeting with a amount that you need to do this project, or apply for a grant. So I would look to John potentially to give us options of how to engage design funds previous to town meeting, or maybe we have to wait till October for town meeting to have that done, and then provide town meeting with an article that would say how much we would need for those design funds.
Thank you, Seth. Jillian and then Maggie.
Thanks. I wanted to echo what Bill said about thanking everyone on the committee and thanking Halverson for their work. It was nice to have that cupcake. I mentioned I like ice cream earlier. I am a little struck by the comments about costs. I thought there were some great thoughts on that from the public. You know, I'm not responsible for the budget for the town, but I do follow it, and John could speak to it better than I could. And I know that things are different than they were a few years ago, but our town has a real history of investing in parks and open space. And we haven't done that at the lowest dollar in many events. Like as a mom, I take my children to 2 beautiful new parks that are in Natick, and I really enjoy them. So I'm less worried about that personally, but I hear people's concern, and I think there's a way for us to address it as a committee. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Maggie, and then David Yancey.
And always appreciate getting to be a part of these meetings and hear the thoughtful deliberations, both from committee members and members of the public. So thank you for continuing that trend of really digging in well together on important discussions.
Thank you. David Yancey, and then Janine. David, you there? No, I'll try one more time in a couple minutes. Janine, and then Mike.
I so appreciated the cupcake, and I love the reinforcement of the goals that we have, and I feel that the designs that we looked at, the conceptual designs, do reinforce that we will have a beautiful meeting place in the South Natick area in either case, and that I believe that you have to have goals, you have to set your standards to then take on the money business and, wrestle it to a worthy, to accomplish your worthy objectives. So I think this helps to sort of stir the passions for parkland that would attract people, as the existing park has for always.
Thank you. Mike, and then Chris.
Hi, yeah, I also appreciate, as others have said, to actually see a visualization of what the possibilities are in either scenario. So that I think that's helpful. And I think someone from the public can mention that we should have renderings without any public investment. And I think we have those if that person wants to look back at the initial renderings we had. So quite a difference between those two, by the way. So I guess my overall look at this is that there's still details, like exactly what trees will be there. So we're going to make a decision with imperfect information. And I kind of look at when we're in that scenario is like which scenario gives the town more options, and it seems to be removal is allowing more options as far as design and reaching the goals that the public has bullet pointed. And it's unfortunate that the design is kind of detached from our decision, but I think it's necessary. I don't think, a group of 20 should be designing a park for the whole town, but I think, the form of the recommendation, I guess I'm not sure, and we'll find out along with, what Stantec has to say. But if we can bullet point significant things that we as a committee think are important to be involved, I think that would be critical and give us all kind of a better feeling. For instance, historical recognition of the indigenous people somehow, the unique history that they had in the beginning of our town. And I mean, that's really a national significance that Natick was created around that. And and this was the spot that had happened. So I can't imagine that we shouldn't involve that. So those kind of things, the footbridge thing, if that's something we as a committee wanted to really put behind, you know, I wish there was a way. Is there a way that in our recommendation, we can kind of have that highly considered? So all those things are coming, and I just really appreciate everyone's thoughtful input and ability to, you know, to listen and to take this information in. And, you know, we've got one more week of input, and then the discussion will begin, and I look forward to it.
Thank you, Mike. Chris, and then David Loding.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of everything I've heard has been very insightful and pleasant. I'm really honored to be a part of the committee. I think that what I've heard a lot of people trying desperately to see both sides, regardless of their opinions or their preconceived notions. There's definitely an effort to make sure that everyone's heard, and that's the point of these things with a community organization. Moving forward, I think that having those conceptual drawings really did kind of put a cherry on the sundae. No matter which way the sundae is dished, it's gonna look nice, and I trust the process. So I hope the community can put the faith into the powers that be that it'll be a good process, and it'll end up being something beautiful that we could all enjoy as a community. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. David Loding, and then David Yancey.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we were able to get together again after all this time. That's been a useful meeting. I think that John and Seth make a really good point about the money, and maybe we should think as a committee about being assertive, at least in expressing our concern for what comes next. You know, maybe we're probably not going to be designing it, but I think we should express concern if we're going to make this decision that we want it to. A big part of it is going to be how it looks in the end.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
David Yancey, if you are there and can hear, you could hit *6 to unmute on the Zoom. All right, let's go to Martin and then John.
Yeah, I totally agree with what I've heard. Both options, we can have a beautiful park and a beautiful place to go. I'm tempted to start to fine tune the park design, but then I remembered I sat on the Easton Navy Yard Design Committee to design those two parks, which were quite a bit of money, but it came out really nice. And that we took about 8 to 10 meetings just on that. So yeah, we still got some more work in park design. One question that is still irking me, which is the one I had at the very beginning, which is the navigability if in the case of dam removal. And I saw these beautiful places today we could put in the boats, but how far the boats are going to get, I am waiting very eagerly until our next meeting, which will be our last informational meeting, to kind of get the final word on the water depth and water velocity and all that nitty gritty that's going to affect that. So thank you.
Thank you, Martin. John, final thoughts.
Just appreciate everyone's thoughtful input. You know, there's certainly decisions that this committee will make, and there are recommendations that will go forward. And I think it's extremely important in this process moving forward. And, you know, I think from a town staff standpoint, you know, the team that I've had the pleasure of working with for the 6 months that I've been back is very thoughtful in terms of trying to find solutions to some of the answers that we might not have right now. So, you know, recognizing that park elements are going to be an important piece of the next phases, I'm confident that we'll find solutions and be able to work together to figure out how to fund some of those things and bring that forward to town meeting or the select board, or what was mentioned in this meeting with, you know, people raising funds or grant opportunities. You know, I may have mentioned one with town meeting being out there, but there are certainly others that can and should be explored going forward. And the town staff that I've had the pleasure of working with is always creative in finding those opportunities out there to move forward with some of these things.
Thank you. Thank you all. To pick up on a couple of the threads you just named, because this is a collaborative process, we can be creative in what your agreement document contains, right? It's not prescribed. It can be unique and it can serve our needs and our desires, and we can try to get the tone right, right? We can do it how we want to do it together. I also want to second what someone mentioned about the power, I think it was David Lotting maybe, about the power of this group's voice. If you reach agreement to be able to take that out into the community and say, this is what we're recommending, this is why, and share that, that is also unique and special. June 27th is our next meeting. We're going to have Stantec present, and we're also going to talk about costs. Right, we're going to do our best on both of those. We are also in the next few weeks expanding our frequently asked questions document to capture some key kind of recent information to add to what we had before on that. Advisory committee members, if you have outstanding questions, so these are questions that would, especially that would impact your choice, right? The sort of most essential decision you're making, please let town staff or Maggie or me know so that we can try to weave those in. And then Maggie and I will get the meeting summary drafted and post this recording for other community members who want to catch up. Bill or Jillian or anybody else on staff, anything else to add on these next steps? I will actually say, committee members, if you know you're not going to be available for either of the July meetings, if you could let Maggie and me know, that would be helpful, because to reach that high threshold, we want to know everyone's perspective, and we'll work with you if we need to talk to you before or after meetings, stuff like that. All right. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful night. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.